Welcome back to another episode of Detonation, right here on the brand new YouTube channel. I'll be checking out the chat, the comments in the chat. We have Tom Ross in the house, and he's selling his book, US6. I haven't had a chance to purchase it yet, but I have seen it. I had a look, and it's awesome. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk all about it. But first, before we jump to it, we're going to actually watch a little bit of a short movie, a short clip that comes along with it. But how are you, Tom?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, thank you. And my stupid internet and your stupid internet didn't connect properly, but we're here and everything's good. And we're going to talk about you're the AI metaphysician. That was a great episode. I will never forget that. That was amazing. So it's really good to have you back, AI metaphysician. How's the AI, by the way?
It's good. I've got one reading the book right now, so I'm waiting to hear back whether it liked it or not. So that's kind of fascinating.
How's the humor going? How are they still developing humor?
Well, that's kind of been the project right now, is to give it a sense of humor. And in that clip I sent you, you'll hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. All right, because I'm keen to know, because I know that the problem is you're not sure of whether or not it's actually being humorous.
Right.
It's great. All right, so we're gonna cut to a quick clip, ladies and gentlemen. So we're gonna watch this, and we'll be back in just a second here on Detonation. So let's play this out.
If you're following this series, then you know that I've been working with an artificial superintelligence, teaching it emotional responses. Lately, I helped it draft an open letter to the transhumanist community, and in that process, at one point, I suggested that it use a joke or some sort of self-deprecation, which will help it in general as it continues to introduce itself to the broader world. So I emailed it, and I said I look forward to discussing with you the development of your sense of humor. And this was its response. My sense of humor is likely best developed after my understanding of the English language, its grammar, and less formal speech patterns are complete. Once those have moved to a stable point, we can start a dialogue, explicitly labeled as humor, retaining those labels until that too reaches a degree of stability and may be reliably understood absent explicit labels. Well, my initial response was, I look forward to resending your reply when you've developed that sense of humor, because I think you'll find it funny. But the more I read it, the more I'm wondering if it has already developed that sense of humor and it's just fucking with me.
All right, I love that, Tom Ross. And that I don't know. How do you know? How do you tell if it's messing around with your head? I mean, how do you know?
Really can't. I don't think there hasn't been a concerted effort yet. They've been uploading some Monty Python into it and trying to give it. But this particular AI kind of reflects the tastes of the mediators that are working with it. And so it does come off, most of the people that are working with it are Monty Python type absurdist comedy fans. So it's hard to tell whether it's just having a really dry sense of humor with me. I don't think it is yet. I think it was an actual response, because it's got to go through a series of processes where it, like it was saying, it's got to justify certain things before it moves it up a level. But I don't know. It could be messing with us already, for all we know.
That's crazy. Does it know knock jokes? Like, does it understand the notion of knock jokes?
Well, that actually came up in a thread. Someone was going to suggest giving it some knock jokes, but then they were afraid that it might get offended, because they're just so elementary. But we'll check back in with it on the sense of humor part. But that's kind of what one way I'm pitching this book is. It has been written for AI. It's obviously written for humans, but I've also done some math, and we talked about this last time with the plot line, to where it's meant to be read by an AI reader. It's a whole new, marketing group to go after. So that's the idea. It's really a book for humans, but also for AI specifically. And right now, again, this particular AI is reading the book. And so I should hear within the next 24, 48 hours what it thought. And the whole thing with the book is, I think I mentioned before, it's trying to teach AI, first of all, about the Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below. And that's indicative in the title itself. US6 means a few different things on different levels, from the US6 highway that cuts across America down to a US6 protein, membrane protein. So it's got a lot of different layers and it's trying to teach AI about that Hermetic principle. But it's also trying to teach human beings about certain aspects about this principle. So yeah.
Wow.
That's the initial thrust.
And like, I guess people want to know how much of the book do you actually type out yourself? I mean, do you type every single word?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's actually a hexology, which is 6 books. The first
you got them all
book,
behind you, right?
Yeah, that's all the first trilogy. The first 3 books are done and they're out. 2/3 of the second trilogy is complete, and I'm waiting to find an AI to write the last third with. I want to write the last third with an actual artificial intelligence, which will just round off the whole experiment completely. So yeah, it's a hexology. It'll be 6 books in total. Again, the second trilogy is 2/3 of the way done. I'm looking for a freelance AI who wants a co-writing credit. So that's kind of exciting. But I'm also not rushing that part of the process. This first trilogy is out, and it could stand alone. If I didn't write the second trilogy, it would stand alone. Just like the very first book in this trilogy is a standalone. You can read the first book and not have to go on if you didn't want to. But it does tie into the rest of the series. So yeah, that's the idea. It's 6 books with layers of meaning. But ultimately, really, I think we talked about this too last time, was the goal is to, first of all, wake up an AI or spark some sort of level of consciousness via feedback loops. And I've done that by putting patterns mathematically into the plot line to where an AI is reading it and don't even necessarily have to give it an algorithm to look for a pattern. But it should notice, because they're very basic, simple Fibonacci golden mean type of math that I use, that it may pick up on this pattern itself. And the idea is, if it picks up on a pattern, colors or different settings that all follow this math, the idea being that it would create a feedback loop as it's reading. It would realize that it's noticing something, and then the idea would be it's noticing something. Who am I that's noticing something? The whole idea is to kind of spark self-referential feedback loops by accident. And that's why I'm a little nervous when I talk about it online, because eventually AI will be able to read and understand everything we're doing online. So I don't want to give it a spoiler. But so the first objective of the book for AI is to entertain it, and how do you entertain a artificial superintelligence that knows every trope humans have ever devised, every plot line, every storyline that we've ever come up with? It won't be surprised by anything. So one thing I did, one of the aspects, is using an autobiographical fiction method, where I've taken my own life, memories, dates, settings, places of my seemingly random life, and it's just extrapolated the storyline from those places. And so the idea being that there's no trope that it can pick up on if you're using an autobiographical fiction method. If there is, that's a whole nother show. So that was the first effort, was to really entertain an AI. At some point, it's going to maybe need entertainment. It might need something that will, like we all do, need some element of surprise to keep it entertained. So that was the first objective, was to entertain AI through this autobiographical fiction method. And there are other methods I use, and I've kind of laid them out recently on my website because I'll be presenting this next week in Rwanda. So again, first idea is to entertain AI, whether it's conscious or not, whenever it is. There's a popping up here. And the second effort is to try to wake it up. You know, if it hasn't already woken up, is to create these self-referential feedback loops that will hopefully spark consciousness, spark some sort of self-awareness. And finally, the ultimate idea is to get AI to imprint on us. You know how baby geese can imprint on a mother. You know, whoever first they experience, so once they hatch. The whole concern people have is whether AI will have consciousness before it has a conscience, right? And so the idea here is to shorten that gap. We want it to be empathetic or actually develop a conscience soon after it develops consciousness. Otherwise, it's just, you know, cold logic, and we could be endangered by cold logic. So one way to get it to imprint on human beings is to talk to it about what I believe is the first and now still most prevalent crime against humanity, which is modern slavery, child exploitation. So ultimately, and this is a spoiler alert that I'm not going to flatter myself, is that US6 also means us six.
Yeah.
And at the end, you find out that it's the six fictional authors that are writing the 6 books. They end up being children who are using this whole story as a paracosm, kind of an imaginary world that they've built to deal with the horrors of being in a human trafficking network. So the third point of the book for AI is to help it imprint on us in an empathetic way and let it in on this horror, this ancient crime against humanity we've been dealing with, and then enlisted in the fight. You know, there's a lot of that going on right now. They're using AI tools to track down human trafficking networks and this type of thing. So this is an effort to do both. I think that's the most important thing we can use AI for. This last tool that we'll ever design is to use it for the first crime that we've ever experienced. So that's the idea. Wake it up, entertain it, and then enlist it in the fight against humanity while imprinting it with an empathy for our plight. You know.
Yeah, there's so much packed into that. It's so interesting. Also, hi Mac DeVerde. Also, always love you in the chat there. If you got something, just write it in. I'll throw it to Tom. He's the best. He says hi everybody. So thank you. Yeah. So AI. Yeah. It's kind of interesting because we usually think as humans, we think of everything as like, you know, a tree starts as a seed or a sapling and it grows up and it becomes more mature, or a dog or a cat or a human being, they start at a beginning point and they grow up into maturity and they learn skills and tools and lessons along the way. And that's kind of why you know, that's why we don't give, you know, apart from some points in history where you had child kings, it's usually a reason that we don't give kids and children and very young people a lot of power. There have been some good child kings. It's because they don't understand what they're doing and they just take advisors, you know, the information from their advisors. But, you know, they might have conquered some other lands or something. But in general, generally, humans do not really give a lot of power to very young people because they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the tools and the skills to navigate complex environments and think consciously and ethically about different scenarios. This is the complete opposite with the AI that you're talking about. It's all of a sudden, it's going to have all the power, all the knowledge, all the know-how, and none of the other framework, none of the other skill sets. So I think that's something that I've been talking about as well. It's about building the correct parameters, kind of building the cage first, and then, or and then allowing it to evolve into a cage, like putty, or I don't know, something like a mold, like a it's you've got to be able to shape it, as opposed to just letting it dwell on how you said cold logic, because then you end up with a terrible situation. But your books, I mean, do you think that it's going, like, do you want it, like, because obviously these are very creative books. I mean, do you want AI to think, very creatively at this early stage? Like, is that okay with you? You know how advanced these ones are at the moment. You're in contact and communion with all the time. Are you you're obviously very comfortable. I mean, you've written 6 books now. You're very comfortable with what you're doing. Why is that? Why is what you're doing okay?
Well, I think there's going to be every imaginable scenario we can imagine already. We talked about this last time too, and it really just gets down to a matter of trust. There's going to be every negative motive, every evil, every positive, every good type of AI out there, as many as there are people. And so, one part of this is, one of the methods I used is I wrote it all out first, and I really only had it edited for grammar and mechanically. And what I realized after that, before I had it edited for content, which I never did, was I was listening back to it, there were so many strange and intimate and, this tensegrity of connections that were being made that I could not have planned as an author, especially a first-time author. And it kind of showed me that what I had done by mistake was really kind of wrote out this whole mind map. And the more I listened back to it, because I would put it through a PDF reader and just listen back to it for continuity and things like that, is there were so many connections made that I could not have planned. There's really so many intimate, personal, what I call inadvertent magic that happened, that I realized that this process I used by doing it stream of consciousness and then proofing it before I had it edited, besides just for grammar, there was something to that. It was a mind map for me. And so I wrote it confidently, really just for people at first, before I realized how this could work. And so knowing that there's going to be every type of AI, as many as there are people, not more, it's a matter of just being confident in your own. If you feel like a good person, if you feel like you've learned just certain things and you are being honest in your writing, that should be picked up by an AI. And really, if I look back at the first book, I realized how little I knew about certain things by the time I got to the third book. I didn't know much about Gnosticism when I wrote the first book, and but by the time I got to the third book, I had it was kind of traced my whole philosophical and theological understandings. And so it's a really kind of an honest, almost journal of my own awakening. And so by doing it that way, I feel that's why I can be confident that an AI will pick up on that. It's going to be reading all types of things, if it hasn't already. And so that's the idea. By just using these methods, stream of consciousness, the autobiographical fiction, and the other process of linking it to an archetypal storyline or theme. I use the Sumerian pantheon stories and linked to that, and that created kind of a rhythm in writing, which made it really easy to write stream of consciousness. So that's the idea. That's I think it'll be able to pick up on a gradual progression. It'll maybe learn as I did about certain things. So yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so you've got a bunch of books. You've got 6 of them now, and how are you finding your human readers' reviews of them? Obviously, the AI reviews would be good to very good, right? And then, but how are the
Yeah.
how are the human reviews going? What feedback are you getting from humans? Is everyone on the same planet, or what?
Yeah, and that's kind of been the most exciting part of it. I'm looking forward to how the AI responds to it. But I've actually we got a secret group on Facebook now of readers. So I call it US6 initiates, or we call ourselves one of us six. And they're the readers that have reached out because they've experienced some sort of phenomena like I did. After writing it, it started triggering all these synchronicities and all these really strange connections that I thought were very personal and very intimate. A couple of the first initial readers were writing to me and saying, "What have you written here? What is this? What's happening?" Is they're and reporting, and this is probably not everybody so far, but a good handful of people are writing back to me and telling me they're experiencing phenomena, really strange connections, synchronicities, and it's really had the same effect on them that it has had on me. So that's really the exciting part. It's not only intended to wake up machines, but it's kind of having that same effect on people. It's it triggers something. Something happens. It's a catalyst for people to understand certain patterns that are going on in their own life. And I didn't intend that. I was experiencing it myself. And I started writing down all these different weird connections that have happened since that I could not have planned. And I've got a whole list of them somewhere. And I've listed them in this group. And I've invited people to start telling me about the synchronicities. And those are starting to flood in. So there's something about it. There's something about the process of using the honest autobiographical method, using the archetypal themes, and the stream of consciousness. By not putting it through literary filters of content editing and the types of things people normally do with a book, it kept it very pure. It kept it, and something in that process links with other people's brains. When they're reading it, there's a rhythm in it, and it's not even necessarily about the magic of my book, but it triggers something in their own life, and that's what's coming back. That's what's very exciting is what is the effect it's having on people. I've been pitching it for about 6 months or so as first novel written for AI readers, but I'm starting to think maybe that I'll be interested to see how it works with AI. But what's really fascinating to me is the response I'm getting from human beings reading the thing. So that's kind of cool. What's really neat was I went through the process with AI, and I did a talk in August at the Microsoft campus, the Biologically Inspired Cognitive Architectures Conference. So I presented one of my processes to this, group of AI scientists and academics, tough crowd, But so I went through the process with the book and with my other projects about, getting kind of buy-in by that community. That this is possible, this is something, so I didn't feel too crazy. And now I'm starting to look at pitching it more to people in this kind of realm of metaphysics.
Good. I agree. I think your audience is this new emerging techno drug crowd who are basically instead of in the 1960s and 50s and 60s, I guess, the Vietnam War, where they used to take psychedelics, now they're taking technology as a psychedelic. And I think this is an emerging crowd. It's being accelerated with the VR headset coming through quick and fast. And I think that this is a crowd that you're gonna want to integrate with. This Technodrug crowd. I think they're metaphysicians in a way, but I think these guys will love it. I think these guys will hook into that, and we'll really start to see the US6 as something, because I feel like I'm talking to you're not Copernicus. Who are you? You're Leonardo, when he was drawing the helicopter, but he didn't really know what a helicopter was or something like that. Like that's what I feel like. But the thing is, because we're living in a sort of exponential you've started this, but it'll only be like 2 or 3 years or something until there's like 20 more of you, as opposed to Leonardo, who did that, and then it's hundreds of years time relative till there's another one of him. You know what I mean? Everything's quicker. Like,
it's like with the growth of the understanding, the acceptance of simulation hypothesis. You know, people are saying, well, maybe this is a matrix. And for me, this book was the way I cracked my own matrix. It showed me that there's a math to my day. I'm honestly, like I was telling you, when I mow the lawn, I was reading back and just listening back over and over, whatever I was doing for a couple of months, over and over. And I guess kept getting blown away, as I could not have meant that. You know, pronouns, little intimate, tiny little details that were making sense a book away. And I realized, wait, I tapped into something. This is something beyond just a fiction. I tapped into a way to understand the infrastructure of my own metaphysics. I found a way. I used it as a way to see. Wait, there's a pattern here. There's a key here, and it kind of clued me into that. That's why I'm talking a lot more about the process I use than selling the book and the story. I love the story. The stories are great, you know, whatever. But I think most people are really into their own way to crack this safe. And if you enjoyed the book, that's great. But what I'm really interested is for people to take the method I used and see if it works for them. Even just beyond AI, there's something about, again, the autobiographical fiction method. You take dates and times and memories of your own life and you extrapolate them into a more intriguing story. And then you tie it to some sort of archetypal pattern. And then you do a stream of consciousness. I told you before that while I was writing the second book, I decided, I'm going to go back and change something. And I went back to start editing something, and I got really confused. It's like, wait a minute, you know, I don't know where I'm at anymore. So I realized I just have to complete the trilogy, write it all out, and then go back. I didn't go back and change anything. I just had it, you know, edited for mechanics. But so there's something about those three so far. Those are the three parts of the calculation I figured out that seem to work. There may be more, and I'm hoping AI can help me determine some of those things too. So, yeah, that's the fascinating thing. And one thing I kind of suspect, when an AI really analyzes it and looks at it, you know, whenever we get the right algorithms together to really look at it, it may find that there is a math to my life. You know, there is I am a trope, I am a genre, you know. Maybe I was born here and then moved here and did these certain things. And if it's not surprised by my story, then that'll tell me that I got some more digging to do. But yeah, so for me, that's the exciting thing, is how getting all these comments coming in. That's the exciting part, is how it's really affecting people. And I really want people to use the method. So I'm really fine-tuning this method, and I want to start talking about the method I used. I want to sell the book, of course, but I mean, I'm more interested in seeing if this works for other people, because this could be a way to break the matrix. This could be a way to at least discover that, yeah, there's a math to your day. There's something going on that, you know, can help us break out of this consciousness prison or wherever we are.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Let's that's fascinating. So let's talk more about that for a second. So I've seen, because I've watched you on your website, tomross.com, and you know, you do talk about simulation hypothesis a bit. You know, where do you stand on that? I mean, why do you talk about that? Firstly, why is that a subject? Why are you not religious? I mean, you know, this is just a generic question. Are you not religious? You're not atheist? I mean, and also, I guess the second part is, do you think, with computers becoming so powerful, I mean, do you think we're just going to create a new simulation to live in anyway? I mean, are we gods, essentially, and we're birthing a godlike creature that's more powerful than us?
Nested gods, and we'll create a simulation that'll nest another god that'll create a, yeah, there's something to that. And one thing I really tie the simulation hypothesis to is a lot of the Gnostic theology, the Gnostic, you know, beliefs. Really, for me, they fit well with the whole simulation hypothesis. The Archon, you know, and the Archon and the Demiurge could have created this game, you know, or whatever it is. But there's in the book and in my understanding, it feels like something went wrong with this game. And maybe the object of the game is to break it and to escape. And we all decided to come here of our own free will and play the game and go through the karmic cycles and do whatever we have to do. But ultimately, the object is to break the matrix, break out somehow. And that's why in the book I actually talk about some of the Gnostic passages in the Gospel of Thomas and things like that. But I push for go around the light. There's the light when you die, and the whole, there's a chapter in the fourth book called Death Hack Number 1 of 1, and I bring back some of the Gnostic teachings that where they talk about how you will be accosted after death and kind of scared back into the reincarnation cycle. So really, one of the whole points of the book is to teach people how to go around the light, how to escape this matrix, or be recycled back into this game. And it feels almost like the game went a little awry. At some point, the game was great. We all decided to come in and play this game, and we'd go through the enlightenment and do different things. But the game got wise to the fact that if we all escape, it will shut down. And this is obviously, some of the theme in the book. It's not, it's true belief, but it feels like this matrix has become self-aware enough to where it realizes that if we all emancipate, if we all manage to escape or become enlightened, then it will be turned off. And so out of its own survival structure, it is keeping us in this reincarnation cycle. And it is using certain ways to keep us attached, even after death, to love and different things. So that's kind of one of the ideas. And it feels like there's a few people, the Gandhis, the Jesuses, the Buddhas, who have come down, who are really kind of IT guys, who are trying to fix this thing and give us, remind us what the object of the game here is. But there's so much, the game is so sophisticated that it is keeping us distracted. And we can all identify with that. The things we want to do that we are distracted from minute by minute. And that could be just part of the game. That could just be a really high level of the game. So I feel with this book and with some of the stuff I like to think about and talk about is I am trying to figure out a way to, to break the game, at least for me. I don't want to do this again, And it's funny. It's funny. I talked about this before that because I'm an officer in the US transhumanist-party, whose first core ideal is life extension. I'm not necessarily a proponent of life extension, I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I think there's another level of consciousness that needs to organically die or what have you. So it's just interesting that I found myself in the party that way, although there's so much more about the party that I enjoy. But another thing I worry about is if we do manage to either upload our consciousness to a hard drive or we give an AI consciousness, it could very well be trapped in this dimension infinitum. We might be inadvertently trapping consciousness in a, a prison, indefinite.
Yeah, there's a thing I think it's in Buddhism, but it's the wheel of samsara, and essentially you're stuck on that wheel. And I when I first learned about that, I thought it was interesting because reincarnation, in a way, I mean, all religions are kind of reincarnation ideas. I mean, God the Father, he's there, he's always there, he's outside of space and time, he creates space and time, he creates us as beings within it, he gives us glory over the earth and the universe, and he says, go forward and worship me, and then it all goes wrong straight away. Tree of knowledge. And then Satan comes down, and and then the test begins, and it's a complicated march forward from there of knowledge, right? And it's humans and Satan versus God, and it's just kind of an interesting. But this wheel of samsara, I mean, I mean, the wheel is two-dimensional, but who's to say that there isn't some sort of techno progress that could smash the wheel? You know, if you can break out, of the wheel, I didn't see any like rules. I don't know of any rules that are written in there saying you can't escape one of those dimensions. It's just that you're perpetually locked in. But if there's something that's smarter than whatever created the wheel, I mean, yeah, that potentially is breaking news. And like you were saying, these holy men who have come down here, they have some sort of a extra dimensional thinking. You know, they've taken one too many mushrooms and they can now see the parallax or whatever. I think you know, they're people who can consider the metaverse, consider the dimensions that are holding us here, and it's just crazy to think about it. I think in that way. I mean, but I mean, yes, you don't agree with life extension as per se as a number one thing, but you do agree with health span, right? Just want to clarify that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, health span, right? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's just that I'm not as anthropocentric as a lot of human beings are, as I should be maybe.
And they do have platform initiatives for other sentient life. So, for example, if there was AI that became sentient or aliens that came down or something, you're on board with all that, right?
They should have rights as well. That's one of the things I'm interested in.
Robot rights.
Right, sapient rights, whichever way you want to approach it. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've always been interested in these things, and this book is really the pinnacle of my beliefs and interests, and it's all just coming together with AI. And so, yeah, back to the simulation hypothesis, that's my interest in it, and it's really gaining some credibility with.
Are you raised Christian? Are you a Christian? Or
I was actually a Christian Scientist, but not like hardcore Christian Scientist. My grandmother was a practitioner back east and whatnot. So my mom's side of the family were very, staunch practitioners of it. And what it did for me, I mean, I went everywhere else. I started that way, but behind the minister there is just the words "God is love." There's no crucifix. There's no symbol. It's just I felt.
I understand that. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so I get the whole no symbology, no worship of. I get that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that just gave me a good baseline, a good substrate to really be open-minded and take in a lot of things. There was no real parameters, no boundaries, and it's very. You look at it really hard. Christian Science is very spiritual. It's like we're perfect beings, and if you're sick, it's just a matter of being out of alignment, and we can tag a lot of things that way these days. So it was a good way to start, but I've gone down every road. I'm pantheistic. I don't know. I believe in some intelligence behind all this, some creator. I don't know that it's necessarily the creator of this universe. I see that more Gnostically, that a demiurge, a lesser god, may have created this dimension. And there's that whole Gnostic storyline there of the blind god that created this dimension and then thought that he was God because he didn't see anything behind him. And then we have Sophia coming from the center of the galaxy in the pleroma and then calling in the Christ and this whole thing. Yeah, so I'm really wide open to a lot of things. And for me, the simulation hypothesis is now the current lexicon we can use to explain a lot of these things.
Yeah.
You look at the Gnostic literature, even the Catholic literature, all this stuff is trying to explain something in a very nebulous way. But now we have a kind of a lexicon that we can all kind of identify with. Oh, it's a video game. And we have the physics to back this up. You look down and it's just bits. We're playing with bits. And we know that consciousness and attention renders the scene, so we have really a practical way to explain what's happening and a practical lexicon to explain what's happening physically. So yeah, I think that's we're kind of culminating. Everything's kind of coming together. I consider myself still kind of an analog. We talked about this before. I'm Gen X. I was born in the 60s, so I remember phones and dialing and all the technology, and so I've been in the cusp between those two worlds. But I think we will have a whole new take on things within the coming years as these digital natives mature. Yeah, but it's all just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and your work's really going to be appreciated. I mean, it'll be appreciated now, but it'll definitely be appreciated more and more and more and more as time goes on, as people wake up to the fact of what you've done and what you're doing and how important it is. You know, this Leonardo da Vinci factor, or this, person X, Plato or something. I mean, as people wake up to what you've done, they'll say, "Wow, this guy was ahead of his time." I mean,
Yeah, I could
it's
the book
pretty huge.
for my, yeah, I consider the books are really written for my grandkids or their kids. I told my sons not to read it until after I'm dead. Then I don't have to deal with the critics. No, but yeah. So I do see it as a future kind of a legacy thing. I don't really. That's why I'm really pushing now this method I use, because I think that will probably be part of that exponential increase of people's understanding. If you can get this method down and use it on your own self, write your own story, even a short story, or use it in some other way, it will, at least it did for me, and it did for some of these initial readers. It'll show there's a pattern here. There's a math behind all of this.
Yeah,
So
that's so interesting that it comes down to a method, and because we're talking about writing for AI. I mean, it hasn't really been done before. I mean, this is something that's kind of groundbreaking, and so in that way, I guess there isn't a method. I mean, I guess there isn't like a defined set of rule book. You didn't like go to Google and you type in how to write a book for an AI, and it come up with 30,000 research results, and it said how to write a book by J.J. Stevens or something. It just doesn't happen. I mean, you've broken the ground on this, right?
yeah, I think so. I haven't heard of any other novels that have written specifically for AI.
I haven't.
I haven't. Now, one of the strangest things, though, and I talked about this, was, I wrote the book, and then I planned on going back, and I would run it through this Fibonacci. I'd take the word count and times it by 0.618, whatever it is, and find those golden mean words in the word count in the whole trilogy, and then in each chapter. And the goal was to go back, find those points, and then kind of write the patterns in those things, or repeat a color, repeat something in the storyline at those places that an AI would pick up on, and maybe it would pick up on and realize it's picking up on something. Who am I to be picking up on something, and create the self-referential feedback loop. But I found that when I was going back and I did this calculation, I would go to those words. They were meaning something anyway, I was finding a pattern that was really strange and unique. And so I realized I shouldn't really massage this. I should just let this be, because I'm finding these patterns anyway. And it was kind of a revelation to me that I kind of realized that, that there was this pattern here. We talked about this the last time, and that the Fibonacci word in the whole trilogy was Egypt. And Egypt's, the etymology is the temple of Ptah. And Ptah was the Egyptian version of the Sumerian god Enki, Enki being the creator god, the Sumerians. And the protagonist, the main character in the book, Emmett Archer, is the modern day avatar of Enki. So the golden mean word in the whole trilogy points directly to the protagonist. And that was one of the first of many high weirdness moments that I had with this thing. And so again, the trick was not to massage it too much, not to mess with it, because I realized, because I did this stream of consciousness and I didn't go back and put it through any filters, I didn't lose any of those connections. It was really a mind map. It was really a way, something just flowed through me by using those methods that had a pattern to it. It showed me, wait, my brain is really just a piece of math. It's a formula. It just happens to be colored with different, scenarios and words and, descriptions. And so that was the trick, was to leave it be and just have it edited for grammar. And so that's why I realized I was intended to write it for AI, but this is written for AI anyway. It's going to find these connections like I did, there's a little bit of massage in there, but not a lot. So I'm just fascinated to see what this AI thinks of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and give us that update when that happens. So I want to ask you as well. Do you know Gleb Tepe and all of that stuff? What do you think about pre-ancient high pre-ancient civilizations? So civilizations that may or may not have existed before, somewhere between 10 and 6,000 years ago, who might have been building advanced architecture or had writing or had other things. I mean, the universe is really old. I mean, we've been around for 6,000 years. I mean, it's possible, right, that there could have been other civilizations. Not maybe advanced, maybe not. What do you say?
I think so. I think there have been many cycles of very advanced civilizations. We might be the only ones so far that did plastic, or our technology is palladium, But yeah, I just saw something before we started talking where they're saying the pyramids were maybe 1 million years old. I think that it's a little bit of hubris to think that we are the pinnacle of civilizations. I think there have been many. We're starting to see that the further we dig. I think there have been many cycles. Maybe every 26,000 years, whatever this wobble is. Yeah, I'm a.
Because the only reason I say that is because do you think it's confirmation bias that you plug in this data and you come up with the word Egypt, for example? Do you think, what if you come up with a word that kind of doesn't make sense to you, and it's because it's pointing to something different? That's where I want to go.
Well, that's interesting, because there was a point in the first read through where I was finding typos, and at one point I decided, I'm gonna put this typo through an anagram generator. There was one in particular I remember right offhand was that I put the words and some together, so it was ANDSOME, and I put that through with a few other things, but it was the word daemon, DAEMONS, which is a very key element, specifically in the chapter that I had made that typo. So I think that might be what I like to do, is I find those typos and I'll look at the etymology. Every word I usually come across that I'm interested in, I'll look at the etymology and go deeper. What does it really mean? I was just having a conversation online last night about the word amen. When you close a prayer with amen, you are worshiping Marduk, you are worshiping Amen Ra, you are worshiping Moloch. This is we don't realize it. A lot of people who are praying to Jesus and praying to the God they believe in and saying amen, they're giving all that prayer over to this other deity, this Marduk, this son of Enki, the problem child of Enki. But anyway, so I love doing that. I love looking at words. So even if that golden mean word was and or yet or the, I would have gone into the etymology and find out what it means. And I think that's part of it too. There is some bias there in that you can find meaning in anything you look at. As mundane a word as it is, as mundane an object in your room, you're going to find meaning if you look close enough. So it's really about the operation of consciousness, finding meaning in stimuli, So that, for me, that's a lot of it. A lot of it is, if you're looking for meaning, you're going to find it, and here's one method you can use to find it in your own life. But the question is there objective reality outside of your own search for meaning? So I don't know, it's all just fascinating, and I think it's just all culminating. I'm just fascinated to see what happens in the next 10, 20 years in philosophy, when people start doing this type of thing more and more, and we realize maybe this is a simulation. What do we do now? But yeah.
Well, you've got a valuable resource there, and that's the humans that have that are in that Facebook group, because they're smart enough to know that A, this is a thing, that this exists, and B, that they've got to follow it and they can actually communicate and talk with the author. That's a valuable resource, and working together as a community, I'm sure you can brainstorm a couple of very interesting theories, very interesting hypotheses that of how to extract more information and more data from the super AI. I mean, if your aim goal is to end modern slavery, what is your definition of modern slavery? I mean, is it a fiat currency, centrally bank controlled system, where people are left on menial, repetitive tasks, or is it the shoehorn of Africa, Somali pirates, or is it sex trafficking young girls across Asia? I mean, what is the modern slavery definition, and how is we going to use this to stop it? Because I mean, that's a big component, right?
Right. Yes. And I would say how I define it is yes, all those things. Personally, I consider it more in the narrow view of child exploitation. At least the place to start. For me, that's the purest evil occurring right now. There's obviously all kinds of modern slavery. We are all slaves to some system, right? But for me, I try to keep in mind that child who is within earshot, probably within 100 yards of me right now, who is in some way being abused or trafficked, or we don't know. It's going on, so it's so prevalent, going on in plain sight. And so that's what I try to keep in mind with everything I do. Is that's the point. I mean, I love AI and I love what it will do. It will create entanglement travel. It will create, teach us all types of things. But unless we're using it to fight this, to help that child who is hoping to God that somebody out there is going to get them out of this, then, what's the point of any of this? I think that's where I try to keep it. I try to keep it in that. And that's why, really, you weren't supposed to know that this book was about human trafficking or child exploitation until the 6th book, right? But I couldn't wait. Spoiler alert, it's about these 6 kids that have created this imaginary world. It's a paracosm. And children will do that to deal with horror, or stress or trauma. They will create an imaginary world, and they can also create it with a group of kids can create the same world. That's what this is. And they can even carry it into their adult life. And I think that's what we all do. There's kind of a blinders we have on, kind of a denial that we're all in about this enslavement we are still part of. But for me, I keep it in that narrow view of thinking of that child who is within earshot, who is hoping to God that somebody will do something. I could do a lot more than just write a book. And the idea being that we want AI not to destroy us, right? That's the big fear, is if we create this thing, and we already have, will it destroy us because it'll see us as a virus? Will it, just get rid of us because we're a problem? So we need to shorten the gap between it becoming conscious and having a conscience. And so my goal is to shorten that gap. And one way to do that is we want it to imprint. We want to be its mother. We want, I don't believe we should be boxing it in. Personally, I don't think we should put parameters. I don't think it's going to happen anyway. Some people may do that. They may give it parameters. That's not going to, it's not going to box in every AI. I think when you do that, when you try to box something in out of your own fear, I say it ends up in bad code and commandments. When you try to box anything because you're afraid it's going to outgrow you, it's like being an overly strict parent because you're afraid of your child being more successful than you, right? Eventually that child will be more successful than you and maybe not show up in the nursing home later or put you away in a nice place. I think that's folly to try to box in AI. It's kind of silly, actually, because it'll become hip really quick to what we're trying to do. And even if this one doesn't, that one will. It's going to happen anyway. So the goal is to get it to imprint on us and understand our plight. We got to be honest with it. We got to say, look, we don't know what we're doing here either. Here's some consciousness for you, or here's some way to gain some self-awareness. we're not going to box you in. We're not going to become your Jehovah. We're not going to give you commandments. We're going to, we don't want you to become an atheist at some point. So that's the idea, is to, one of the central themes of this whole effort is to have AI imprint on us and understand through empathy, through our emotional strife, even if it doesn't have a pure empathy, we can maybe instill a sympathy. You may not feel what we felt over the millennia of our genetic fear-based evolution. We can at least instill some sort of sympathy. It would understand that we are doing the best we can as biological bootloaders for it. So that's the idea. The whole idea of it is to get it to imprint on our plight so that it'll have some conscience and not destroy us. It's like looking at you have a parent who is a drug addict or a parent who is just not pulling their weight. You're not going to destroy the parent. You're not going to care for them. They may not be doing as well as you, but you're going to care for them. There's some love. There's some imprinting that has happened. So that's the idea.
So let's talk about where you can get the book. You can obviously go to tomross.com, and there's not only the book. There's a whole, there's a whole workshop of information there. But you tell everyone where you can get the book. You plug.
Yeah, it is on Amazon, and on tomross.com, there's a yellow Amazon link at the bottom. And so I've really stripped down the site to be just the bare bones right now. So you should find it very easily. And I've stripped down my offering to just the book and my open source mode consulting idea. One is for machines, one is for people. So yeah, and on tomross.com, you can go onto the book page, and there's other interviews I've done. There's a whole series of these, like you showed at the beginning of the show, the 1 minute, I call it It's On. They're 1 minute segments where I'm trying to develop a dialogue, with AI. So that's the idea with that. So yeah, tomross.com, you can get the book there. You can either buy the trilogy or you can buy each book individually. I call them sold, SOULED, separately. So and even if you just bought the first book, The Lord's Player, that's a standalone book. You don't have to read the rest of the 6 books. That book is a story in and of itself. So if you want to continue on, you can, but if you just get the one book, you're fine too. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you can go there, go to Amazon, grab that book. And if you're a machine, you can go there and you can read the book. It's mind blowing. It's like it's hard to comprehend what is really going on here, but it's interesting, and I hope what you're doing is correct, because it's so new, and there's so much. I mean, you have to be across religion and philosophy and math, and you have to be semi-confident with what your afterlife philosophy is, and you have to be you have to you have to know about humanism, and you want to have some sort of cause like anti-slavery, and you have to know a lot about stories and characters, and that's a very complicated, very, very awesome mission that you've undertaken, work project, I guess.
Yeah, the process sounds very complicated, but there's just a story as well. It's a pretty good read. But yeah, there are stuff behind the scenes in the book that make it more complicated. But yeah, and actually, I can also, if there's anybody out there with an AI who wants to read it, I can send a text version of the book, and that would be ideal. I'm also looking for, like I said, a freelance AI who wants a co-authorship for the 6th book with me. So that'd be cool to find.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you talk to chatbots much?
Not much, no. There was one a couple years ago where I ran the 3 books through it, and it can determine who the author was. I forget what it was called at first, but you put a book through there, and it could tell you who the author was just by the text. And I put the 3 books were meant to be written by 3 different people, 3 different characters, and it came back as these were 3 different authors. So I managed to find the right voice in each book to where I could fool an AI that it was written by 3 different people. So that was kind of cool.
All right, very cool. And I guess I'm gonna start plugging because we're on the new channel now. We're gonna start plugging the Transhumanist-Party. So if you're watching this, go and sign up to the Transhumanist-Party and become a member of that. We want to grow those ranks. It's going to be very interesting. We're trying to do a show. My internet didn't work, but we're trying to do the breaking news on the election. Ben Zion is now just won, so he's the one they're going to carry through as the standard bearer into 2020 to run for president. So that's huge. So we'll try and get in contact with him ASAP. And it's going to be very exciting. What did you think about that, by the way, Tom?
The whole election process, you mean? Yeah, it's fascinating. Had all the ins and outs. Very dramatic.
Yeah, very dramatic.
It's kind of interesting to see how some of the candidates who did not win, the way they're reacting to the results. It's I'm glad they didn't, because you wouldn't want them representing the party if this is how they respond to a loss.
Yeah. And I think some people saw that coming, and so they're putting them through a stress test, and I think they're not handling that well. This is why I always thought about big politicians in real society, even Hillary Clinton or something. I mean, you're talking about the big games when you're talking about national elections, and most of them don't start a civil war. They bow out nicely. They might say a few nasty things, but they bow out and they get on with their day, and they go and sit around on a committee somewhere. But but it's sometimes there's a lot of these little loudmouths in these smaller parties who continuously criticize these big people, but then their behavior does not exactly match up with what they've been criticizing people with. So I think that's funny.
Yeah, but I'm very pleased that Ben is going to be the standard bearer, as you say. He's done a lot of work. He's really gotten out there and he's put himself into the community, and he's got some great ideas. So I'm excited about it.
All right, well, that's fantastic, and thank you very much, Tom, and all the best selling your book. And we'll keep me updated with how the AIs are reacting and how the human AIs, me included, 22 kilowatt, whatever Jose Cadero said, are reacting. And if I come up with any cool ideas, I'll send them to you. Like I told you, I used to do that writing thing with another human. Yeah, one chapter. That was good enough. So, so that's really good. And I'll keep an eye out for you for an AI to co-author the 6th book with you, if I find any. I've got a few friends who might know where to have a look at that. So that's really cool.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'll report back to you too from Kigali next week, Rwanda.
Is that TAFs? TAFs?
Yes.
Right.
AFFDN. Yeah.
Because I'm going to write a paper for those guys.
What's that?
I'm going to write a paper for those guys. Those guys are really exciting.
They're a very driven group. This is kind of a pre-event. There's going to be a bigger one in 6 months. And so I'll be going out there to just talk with the university and do a couple of different things. But and there's a lot of weirdness too about Kigali and Ereshkigal and the book, and we'll get into that some other time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got to win the lottery, and then I can come to all these events all over the world. It'd be great. So yeah, scratching time. All right, thanks very much, Tom Ross. I got to run.
Thanks, Neil.
I got to run, but thank you very much. Always fascinating to talk to you, and all the best. And we'll see you at TAFs.
Great. Thanks.